Good evening and welcome to Curated Cribs. I'm Cindy Peterson, the Executive Director at the Talbot Museum of Art. And to start us off, I'd love to talk a little bit, an introduction. Many know Bonnie and Bob. And so Dr. Robert Trestman is Professor and Chair of the Carilion Clinic and Virginia Tech Carilion School of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Medicine. He was born in New Orleans, but has lived most of his life in the Northeast. And you'll see some of that influence as we go through the collection. And Dr. Bonnie Trestman is the director of the Carilion Clinic Huntington's Disease Program and assistant professor at the VTCSOM Department of Basic Science Education. She is also the special programs director at HD Reach in Raleigh, North Carolina, and is a private teletherapy practice. She was born in New York and lived in the Northeast prior to moving to Roanoke in 2017. And we're so glad that both of you are in our community and, a part of the museum in many different ways. Both Bonnie and Bob are involved in research and both provide educational lectures to audiences nationally and internationally. Bonnie and Bob met while working together in Connecticut. They married in 2012, and between the two of them, they have 5 adult children, Leor, Moss, Chandler, Madison, and Dove, many joining us this evening, so welcome. And both Bonnie and Bob love to travel and look forward to more travel in the future. And that's a great kickoff because many of these pieces, of course, are part of the time that you spend together traveling. And so as we start on the second floor of your home, tell us about your collection philosophy and some of the first pieces that you and Bob have collected.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to the Talbot and especially you, Cindy, for giving us this opportunity. It really is an honor. We love the Curated Crib programs and we're thrilled to be part of it. When I was first asked to be part of this, I really thought about what you said about art collectors. And I never really considered Bob and myself art collectors per se, but I thought about the Curated Cribs that I have seen and know that there are certainly artist studios, such as Eric was on, Curated Cribs. And we were able to walk through his studio and other artist studios. Betty is on as well, I believe, and to see their collections of their art as well as some other artists that they've collected. And there were other art collectors who really collect a type or a genre of a certain type of art, which I would consider an art collector. And you had some people who actually had an art dealer who knew the type of art that they wanted. And for me, it really was that Bob and I fit into this other category that was people who really appreciate art when they're traveling, or even local artists when they go to galleries, that you see a piece of art and it brings out an emotion in you. And you have this, you want to ask questions about the art. If you're able to, you want to talk to the artist or somebody who knows about the artist. And for us, when one of the categories is travel, and it really is a good place, as you said, to start in terms of these 2 pieces, which were the first pieces that Bob and I will use that term collect, because I think that makes sense now, have collected. These 2 pieces were from our trip to Sydney, Australia. And we were lucky enough to be able to go to the Sydney Opera House, that iconic, beautiful building with the sails, to see an opera. But in that building is also a wonderful restaurant as well as a gallery. And we were walking along the side of that building, and in one of the windows, there was Aboriginal art that really drew us in. In the invitation, we talked about the dialogue that started in terms of how we collected art, and I will let you in on all of that. In Sydney at the Opera House, standing in front of the window there, that was really the first time we looked at each other and kind of said, well, it doesn't hurt to look. And we walked into the gallery. And although there was a beautiful piece in the window, we were really drawn to these 2 pieces that were hanging up on the wall. And we learned a bit about the artist. The artist's name is Thomas Tapajeri, and he's pretty significant in terms of history in Australia because he was the last of his tribe, along with 6 other members. They were the last of the Aboriginals to walk out of the desert, out of the Australian bush, to meet the Western world for the first time. And with it, they brought some of this incredible art. This style of art, which you have seen, is called Dreamtime. And each dot in each area represents a sacred place that's from the Common Era that has been passed down. And at these places, there were initiation ceremonies that were held. And the way that the Aboriginals would pass this down from ancestor to ancestor was through song and was through painting. So we really loved these. We did look at them and said, okay, well, I guess we might be purchasing some art. And we had the owner of the gallery take them down, and we looked at one and we looked at the other and said, you know, they really need to be together. They need to stay together. So we did purchase both of them. And right now they are hanging up right near my office, so that when we do come in, when I do come into my office, I get to experience that again. And that's really what you'll see in a lot of the art, that it brings us back to that place, and it just brings us joy. So we're going to swing around a little bit in our choreographed way that we have, and we're going to show you a local artist. So this artist is somebody I met in 2018, and his name is Ed Bodette. And he has done these serigraphs, these silkscreen serigraphs, and it's obviously because of my northern roots, and this is a fire escape in New York City. It really, again, drew me in, and I didn't know he was a local artist. Ed was actually born in Long Island, where I was born, and after school, he came to Roanoke and spent about 15 years here. Now he has a studio in Fincastle, and his home is in Fincastle. And what he said is that even though he moved down to the South and he looked around at some of the beautiful things here, he was very much drawn to what he remembered from his roots. And it really, it was so nice to be able to combine being able to support and to have a piece from a local artist, but to go back to the familiar place. I've lived in the Northeast all my life. Bob lived in New York City, and this really reminded him certainly of the things that he saw every day. So we were really happy to get this. And we're going to come down the stairs very gingerly. And you will see, I'm going to stop here a second so I'm not walking and doing this. I think you're going to see three kind of themes as I was going through and looking at these pieces. You saw two already. One was the artwork from our travel. The other is local artists. And the third, you're going to find that there are some pieces that include the theme of fencing. Bob and I met in Connecticut during work, but also we were fencers, and I'm currently a fencer now. I've been lucky enough, and there might actually be some of my fellow fencers and a coach or two who have coached me over the years to a point where I have represented the United States in 2 World Veteran Championships. One in 2015 in Limoges, France, and recently in 2019 in Cairo, Egypt. And this next piece you will see definitely has a fencing theme. So this piece was given to me by a colleague of Bob's who actually did fence when he was in college many years ago, let's just say. And he knew that I was getting pretty serious about fencing. The story is that his mother actually picked this up from an antique store. It is a photograph that has been hand colored, and I don't know much about her, but I just think that she's amazing. I did have it framed. I worked with a framer to I think bring out a lot of the highlights of the red. This is well before anything like Photoshop. So it was a photograph. And it really is in a time of a period of time where females weren't allowed to fence. They were allowed to practice for posture and for exercise, but they weren't allowed to compete. So to me, I think this is just a wonderful piece. We're gonna come this way. So when we did move down here, we knew that we wanted to entertain. It's wonderful that we're entertaining people on Zoom tonight, but we like to entertain in person. So we had, when we redid the house a bit, we turned this room that had many walls into a great room. And we wanted to make this a place where we could also highlight some of the art because of all the things that I mentioned. So the first piece that we're going to show you is a piece that we collected, that we commissioned actually from an artist in Israel, in Tel Aviv. And I believe on the screen, you're going to see something very similar that was in a window in Tel Aviv. Bob and I were walking along one of the streets in Tel Aviv, an area that has a lot of artists, and in the window was something similar, but a little bit smaller. And there was the, it doesn't hurt to look dialogue that happened again. And we went in and we met Yiggal Presler, who is the artist. Yiggal was born and raised in Israel, And if you look back at some of his earlier works, if you Google Yigal Presler, you would see that it's very different than some of the things that he has been doing over the last couple of years. Yigal is really focusing right now on a common household object, a clothespin, where he feels that when you take apart the middle, you have a male and female, a woman and a man, and that when you bring it together, they create other things. So if you look closely here, you will see that there are clothespins. And the form of art that he does now is something he calls zygotism. And zygotism basically are two different types of art, the clothespin and something, whether it's contemporary or it's pop art or it's classical. And he basically states that the clothespin and that type of art come together as parents to form a new creation. And this is called zygotism of Yigal Presler's clothespin and Keith Haring. So you can very much see the influence of Keith Haring in this. So the story went that we did go in and talk to him, and Bob, this time we actually did walk away a couple of times from this gallery, but we were very drawn in, and we went back, and I said, I knew that this could go two different places, potentially two different places in the house, but that the painting that was in the window of Yigal Presler's gallery in Tel Aviv was a little smaller. And he said, I'll make you a bigger one. And sure enough, he did. And then we received this through the mail, basically, through delivery a few months after we had left. And we are enjoying it very, very much.
Well, and I think that's, a point where, throughout the house, you have that vision to where things should be. And I think that leads us into this next piece as well. Yes. But it's a continual theme of knowing that piece, where it's going to be in your home, or, what is it going to look like as you commission works.
Right. So, and this one, very interesting, Cindy, is that I knew where this was going to go before I knew where most of the rest of the house was going to go. So these are three pieces by Matisse, André Matisse, French artist. And these were from his later stages at the end of his life, towards the end of his life. These, we actually saw a Matisse that was in the gallery of at a gallery in New Orleans. So again, we said that Bob is from New Orleans, and we've had a chance to go back many times. And right on Royal Street, there's a little corner gallery. And we saw a similar type of this genre, this series in the window, and went in to ask about it. And we liked it. We saw it and we liked it, but it wasn't something that we said, oh, we need to take this home. However, the owner said, oh, well, I have a couple of other pieces that are not out yet that I haven't framed, and would you like to see them? That was probably a bit of a mistake, but we said yes. And she pulled them out of the drawer, and here was the Blue Nude series, and which we just absolutely love. They are lithographs. Some of the original ideas that Matisse had were cutouts, as people know. These are the second part, the lithographs, or original lithographs. And we looked at them and said, yes, I think, one of them would look really nice in the house. This is when we were living in Connecticut. And we played around with them. We curated them, if you want to use that term. And we just said, again, these all need to stay together. So the issue with where they were going to go, when we came to this house and we took down some walls, we also created this bump out of the fireplace. And all I said to the builder was, here are the dimensions. These three paintings, these three pictures have to go over the fireplace. So I'm not really sure, what else you're going to do, but this needs to fit here. So that were their directions. And I wasn't even sure where the rest of the furniture was going to go, but I knew where these were going to go.
It's a great story, and just so fitting as you walk into your home and see that to the left.
I know we're getting the skylights a little, or the recessed lights a bit in there, so sorry about that. We'll try to turn off some of them. At the same gallery, another time, we came across another painting, another picture in the window there. And this was an artist that Bob and I knew well. This is Yaakov Agam. This is called Midnight Rainbow, and we saw this in the window. When I was a little girl, I would go to the Museum of Modern Art in the Guggenheim, and they would absolutely have Agam pieces there. Agam is really the father of kinetic and movement type of art. He is an Israeli painter and artist, and he is alive and living in his 90s and creating art, from what I understand, in Paris. This really drew us in, and it was just so wonderful to have this opportunity to purchase a Yaakov Agam. You'll see that same day, and I think you'll see on the screen soon, Bob and I were walking along the river, and there was basically a pathway with different types of art, sculptures and whatnot. And as we were walking closer, we saw in the distance a statue of art, and we both were like, that has to be a Gam. And the artist, the owner, the gallery owner, didn't say, oh, by the way, you're purchasing this, go take this walk not too far away. She didn't even remember that this Agam was in New Orleans. And as we got closer, we saw absolutely it was an Agam, which was so thrilling for us to purchase this and then to be able to turn around and take this walk and see this. And you will see through some of these pictures that you're being seen that the beauty of Agam is that you really, each step you take, you see a different perspective. So it just was so wonderful. And even though this is flat, there's a lot of movement in here, and you can see, all of that type of movement. The other wonderful thing is that when we did go to Israel, we were in Tel Aviv, and right outside of Tel Aviv, about 20 minutes outside, is the Yaakov Agam Museum, which you will see a couple of pictures from. And that is a museum, as Cindy, you have mentioned when we were talking about this, that is dedicated solely to Agam. It is the town, it's in the town of his birthplace. And you walk in, first of all, outside are wonderful Agam pieces. And then when you go inside, and for those of you who have been to New York or live in New York or have gone to the Guggenheim, you can see that there's a very Guggenheim-esque feel in that museum where you walk around and you have all these pieces. Some of the pieces have mirrors behind them. Some of them actually move, but all of them really show movement. And it's just such a wonderful museum. And we were so happy to be able to go there. And I couldn't show Agam without stopping at this piece called Mini Fencer that Bob will pan down to. Just because it's a prelude to something at the end of the tour. But this is something I call Mini Fencer. My friends, I hope friends, at Black Dog Salvage have created a couple of pieces for me. And when I went in one day, there was a statue of a person made up of all this hardware of a person fishing. And I looked at Bob and I said, oh, I have an idea. I want to make a fencer. And I worked with the guys. I sent them some photographs and I talked to them back and forth. They were having a bit of a hard time. And I said, well, this isn't right or that's not right. And, can you do this? And this is the many iterations in. I talked to them when they thought that they were done, but I told them that this is fine, except for the fencer is right-handed and I'm left-handed. So their answer was to pick up the top of her and just turn her around. And I said to them, you can't do that with people. You can't just take us and turn us the other way. So there was one more iteration and I went to pick her up and I think that they were happy to perhaps get rid of her and me. But we love her. This is something that we just enjoy as we're sitting here on this area. And we just think it's a lot of fun. But it's called Mini Fencer and you'll see why. So we're gonna go backwards a bit. And we're going to come around to another piece, which is probably the last piece that we have collected so far. And it is actually from that same gallery in New Orleans. That might be better. And it is, as people might notice, no, it's better this way. How's that? Okay. Marc Chagall. So Marc Chagall is a French-Russian painter who is Jewish. And this is a lithograph from a book, one of the books that have been shown in some of his art. And we love Chagall. We love the colors that he uses. And this is Le Jouet de Flûte, the flute player. And we really absolutely loved being able to own a piece of Chagall. Certainly when we were in Israel, one of the things that we did miss was seeing the very famous 12 stained glass windows in the Abel synagogue in Jerusalem. So that's definitely on the list. The 12 stained glass windows represent the 12 tribes of Israel. And when you see any Chagall in person, it really takes your breath away. At one of the volunteer meetings for the Taubman, we were talking about different Israeli artists and we talked about Chagall. And I mentioned that I have been in the Paris Opera House, and I don't think any picture that you can find on the internet does its service, does justice to it, because you look up and you see this amazing, wonderful art that was created by Chagall. That was a trip that I did take, I believe, with my mom to Paris, and we were able to see that. It was absolutely breathtaking. So we're going to come around to another local artist. So again, a little bit of travel, a little bit of fencing, and a little bit of local artists. This is also something that for people who are in Roanoke will recognize, is a Mary Boxley Bullington. And this is called Fire Sermon, and is a bit of a story behind this. And I will tell this to you because there are people online who are from this area and know Mary, and you'll understand how absolutely ridiculous this is. But I went into a gallery that's very close to the Taubman. And Bob and I both saw this piece, and we really said that we liked it. We kind of left, and I went back in one other time about a month later, and it was gone. And I'm not somebody who's on a lot of social media. However, I did find Mary and emailed her, and she said, "Oh, that piece, yes, I have it in my home. Why don't you just pop on by and take a look at it?" As I said to you, I'm from the Northeast. We don't pop into strangers' houses. So I really didn't know what to do, because my quandary was that I didn't tell Bob I was really interested in purchasing this. Not that that would have been an issue, but I didn't want him to talk me out of it. So I figured, what am I going to do here? I've been invited to this person's home. So my daughter, who's on the line here on the Zoom meeting, Madison, she will attest to this. I contacted her. I gave her the address. I said, "I'm going in at this time. If I'm not out in an hour, you tell Bob where I am." And again, for those of you who know Mary and how lovely she is, know how ridiculous that is. But again, I'm not used to that type of hospitality. Still, after 4 years, I'm starting to get used to that. But obviously, I was fine. I came home with this, plopped it up on this area here, and Bob walked in and said, "Oh, we have new artwork." And that was sort of the story. I was also very interested in this because, as you said, Cindy, in terms of placement, I knew that I wanted this here because of the colors and the composition, and I thought it was really a nice place to have next to our next piece. And we talked a little bit about, do I have favorites? And I guess there are top 3 favorites that I have in this house. This is definitely one of them. This was acquired in 2015 when Bob and I had a wonderful trip to Italy with friends of ours who might be on, and that would be Monisha and Shiv Tasker. And what I found out when we were in Venice is that there was not a proclamation, but basically a law that said in the 13th century that all furnaces had to be removed from Venice and shipped to a nearby island because they were afraid of fires. So anybody who had any kind of glass making skills were shipped to this island, which obviously was Roanoke. And when we were on Roanoke and went through the island and went through galleries, there were lots and lots of things, beautiful things that we've seen. We went to one gallery that was quite large, and they had hundreds of pieces there. And as we walked through towards the end, Bob and I looked at each other and said, "Do you see the 3 circles?" It's like, and that's the name of this, Tres Serci, 3 circles. And he said, "Yeah, really like that." And very orchestrated, the people who gave us a tour said, "Well, is there anything that you liked that tickled your fancy," kind of thing? And we said, "Yes, those 3 circles." And there was kind of a hustle and bustle. And as we were sitting and going outside to this little patio area, there was this that was taken down from its high pedestal or place where it was and placed on a pedestal. And you will actually see where it was placed, and that there's, the beautiful water, and it happened to be a beautiful day, which caught the light, which helped the selling point. And we did not expect to purchase this, but it was very well orchestrated that they showed us in the best light and said, "Please make an offer." So we did, or actually I did. Bob sends me to do all of that. The artist is Michele Rosetto, who was a master art glassmaker. And as Bob showed you on the side, it really is 3-dimensional. There are the 3 pieces, but there is a rim here. These are globes with etching on the front and back, and you can see that they are hollow globes. And when people come in, and you can see the very front of it, but then the side of it, and then you can see on the front of it as well. And I know people might say that we're not doing this justice because it does need to be in front of natural light. And in our home in Connecticut it was, but it just didn't fit in terms of how I wanted to curate, again, I'm using all these terms, this area here. So we have light that is shining on it. But to me, when people walk in, this is a piece that they are able to see. So we're really happy with this. A lot of people will come in and just are drawn to this. And it makes us very happy to remember that trip, because it was a wonderful, wonderful trip. So we're going to come in this way into the dining area where there's a couple of pieces. And the first piece is going to be a local artist, Diane Patton, who I met at one of the open studios, the Roanoke Open Studios. And I really liked this one. It drew me in because it reminded me of the autumn up in New England. And also when I was very young, I lived in upstate New York, and I remember in our home that we had white birch trees, and my mom will be able to tell you as well. And to me, some of these really do remind me of the white birch trees. So I was very drawn to that, and I absolutely love that one. So coming around, I'm going to do a little bit of a, I'm going to turn off the lights here because we figured out that it's actually better to see these with the lights off because of the glare. So these 6 prints were from an artist that we did find also in New Orleans in a different gallery. The wonderful connection was that he's from Connecticut. He's born in Connecticut, born and lives in Connecticut. And this is Richard Daber. And he is like a pop surrealist type of artist, he calls himself. And he's very much into puns, idioms, kind of funny things. We were walking down the street, I believe it was also on Royal Street, and there was a gallery with a very large painting. And it wasn't something that I would want, but it was just interesting enough to draw us in. And when we went in one of the back galleries, there were all of these signed and numbered prints, lots of them. And you kind of like, what is this all about? And we realized that the titles were all puns or something very interesting. So as I said, Bob and I like to entertain, and we do have dinner parties. So one of the fun things is that when we're sitting here, inevitably somebody will take a look over and like, what's all that about? And it's kind of a game. We tell people that they need to, to guess what the titles are. So I won't make people guess because it will take a while, but I will tell you the names of them. Starting with the easiest one, I think, is kind of easy because the name is right there. You'll see that iconic Warhol Campbell soup, and then an egg on the top, and that is called egg drop soup. So that's the easy one. Coming down here, you will see that there are bottles, and some people say they're bottles of wine, and I'll say yes, they're fortified wine, which is also known as port. And in the background, there's an ominous sky and some lightning, and that one is called Any Port in a Storm. So we'll come up to this one, a little bit harder to see, and I do apologize. It's very hard when things are behind glass and we're trying to film them. But that you'll see a cannon, a firing cannon, and there is a tether here that has been severed, and that one is called loose cannon. If you go up here, you'll see that iconic, and I don't know if Fred is on here, but here's an ode to London, the telephone booth. And you will see an animal inside, which looks like a horse, but it's not. It's a donkey, otherwise known as an ass. So this is called My Ass is on the Line. Then you'll come over, and the reason I love this, it was very Magritte-ish and a little bit of that pop art as well in the Brillo soap pad. So that is Soap Box Derby. And my favorite out of all of them, which also is the most complex and complicated because people do get fixated on that Whistler's mother kind of thing, which has nothing to do with. On her lap is an animal that some people call a rabbit. You can also call it a hare, but this is spelled H-A-I-R. And this is not a good bunny. This is a very bad bunny. So this is Bad Hair Day. So that's my favorite.
Well, and that, like you said, Bonnie, it's great for conversation at when you have, people over. But tell me about when you and, Bob were looking at all those prints. Did you take hours to sift through, or did you just go through and say, oh, these 6? I mean, it's hard to decide.
It is hard, and he really does have a lot of them. If you do Google Richard Debar, you could see how many he has. As Bob is holding the camera, he nodded his head. He didn't take hours. I took hours. For me, it was the composition, it was the color, it was the name, the title, and trying to put those together. So for me, the Magritte, the Warhol, Bob loves, wine and port, and we both love wine. But it was just in terms of the color and figuring out what went with each other. And because I have a lot of hair and take a lot of time to do it, I knew I needed at least one of the bad hair day kind of things. So it did take quite a lot of time to figure out how we were going to set these up and which ones, because they were all wonderful. And there are so many as well that you could look up. So again, if we're talking about top 3, I don't think I can rank 1, 2, and 3, but I think that this is really one of my top 1. This is a painting by an Israeli, well, he was from Kazakhstan, but migrated to Israel. He lives in Israel, in Tel Aviv. His name is Moshe Rapport. So in Tel Aviv, Bob and I were walking along, and as I said, going into different galleries, and we saw paintings of birds as well as portraits that absolutely captivated me. I have to say, I fell in love. I looked at these for a long time. We did ask about some of them that were there in Tel Aviv in these galleries, and we left. We saw a book. I was really intrigued, and we walked along to other galleries, and we walk in, and immediately I would see a Moshe Rapport and would just kind of walk over to it and stare at it, and I just was really drawn in. So the pelicans, there was a whole series of birds, and many of them are pelicans, really captivated Moshe because that's a migratory bird. The pelicans migrate from the Baltics to Africa, and they land in Israel for a long period of time. And I think that he really identifies as an immigrant himself. This one especially, just to me, shows this bird in flight. And he always kind of juxtaposed something like a portrait. And it's not just a sitting portrait. It might be someone lying down or taking off a piece of clothing or drinking, and against a background that might be full of graffiti or maybe unfinished even. And I just really was drawn to it. We left Israel, and last year during the pandemic, I was supposed to be going to Madrid to see my daughter who was doing study abroad, and I was going to take my son who lives in Boston, and we were going to meet her there. So I had budgeted for flights and hotels and activities and different things, and then the pandemic hit. And we were lucky enough to get all of those funds back. And I kind of thought, and I said, I'm going to reach out to this gallery. So I did reach out, and immediately the next day they contacted me to say the paintings that you were interested in had been sold. But Moshe is in his 70s, and he's in Tel Aviv, and he's in lockdown. He would love to recreate something. And they sent me a couple of different iterations of this painting that I loved. And you will see on the screen that I picked one of them, obviously this one. And Moshe did send through the gallery the paintings as it was being created for me. So I'm in love with this. This means a lot to me. I love the pelican. I love the flight. I love the graffiti in Hebrew and in English. And I think it goes so well here. This was something that I really said to Bob, someday I'm going to own one of these. And it just so happens that that's the silver lining for us during this pandemic, is we were able to do this and employ an artist during a time that he wasn't sure what was going to happen. So we are very, very happy with this.
Well, and when you're working with an artist, tell us a little bit about that process, because it was over months, and then that anticipation that it comes with in a crate, and you're unpacking it, and you get to see it. What does that feel like as you're working?
So you do have some pictures, I believe, of us receiving that that crate, and it came in a very large wooden crate. There was some apprehension that now is funny to look back on. However, at the time it wasn't, but you should see on one of those one of those photographs that there was a, be fragile, do not step on a sticker that was on the side of that crate. And as we got this, and this is something that Mary would probably be like, cringing at, or most of your staff at the Taubman would be cringing at, is that I saw that there was a footprint right on that sticker. And I'm going to assume that that was done by accident, but it was at the time when I saw it, my heart stopped, it really skipped a beat. And Bob assured me, well, nothing is broken around that. Let's open this up and make sure it's okay. And it was. So I do keep hold of that photograph. It's funny now. It wasn't funny at the time. So we did keep in touch with Misha during the time that he created this, which was a few months. The artist I'm going to show you inside is a local artist, Cheryl McCain. She lives in, I believe, Floyd now. And we saw her work when she was in an outdoor gallery in Roanoke when we moved here. And we were walking around and taking a look. And again, I was drawn in because of the theme. So I looked at some of the work that she did and I said, Cheryl, I stood right here. I know where this is. And she said, yep, it's New York City. She had taken a trip recently and she was in a yellow cab. This is a cab next to her. She said she had her camera and she opened up the shutter and she just kept clicking away. And this is what she came up with when she developed, when she had the pictures. And she decided to create the art exactly like she saw on her photographs. And I just love this. Again, a local artist who was painting places where we have been. So I love this one and I really wanted another one next to it. And this one really spoke to me because it reminds me of that iconic Edward Hopper photo painting. And Bob is an avid cyclist, so I wanted to include that in here. And I just love that kind of ghostly like figure there. So I thought that these were a lot of fun, again, by a local artist.
They're beautiful. And like as you've woven throughout your entire house, the themes of travel and tying to those images for both of you that are meaningful from the Northeast, from New Orleans, and the fencing.
And I think we're going to go outside for the last two, and I'll tell you a little bit of story. And if it is too loud, just please let us know. We are kind of by one of the streets or a corner house, so hopefully it's not too loud. So as we're coming around, I will tell you a little story in terms of moving here. When Bob was interviewing at Carilion, during his third interview, they had asked me to come down. I have never lived in the South, as I had said, and I was definitely apprehensive. I didn't know how I was going to fit in, where the culture was. Art is really our happy place. We are not a couple who says we're going to go to the beach or go on a cruise or like to be on the water or go to the mountains or camping. We really like to get lost in a city. Sometimes we actually do get lost in cities. We go to museums, but really what we love to do is to go to local galleries and look around. So I was very apprehensive. And as I flew into Roanoke, I saw the Roanoke Star, which I said, oh, that's very lovely. And I was sitting next to the window. Bob was sitting next to me. And I looked down and I said to him, what is that? And he said, oh, Bonnie, that's the Taubman Museum. And I looked at him and said, I think I'm going to be okay here. So art is really our happy place. So when I did get here, I wanted to volunteer a bit. And I do probably before COVID was a docent. And one of the last exhibits that I did go to was the Dorothy Gillespie exhibit, and found out that she was a local, native to Roanoke. And she lived a lot of the places that I lived in New York. She also has a place close to Boca Raton where my mom is, and has a few pieces that are still there. And I was very drawn to her. So you will see there is a 12-panel piece that's being shown that when I went in, because we are allowed to take pictures in this museum, except when we're not, but I was able to take this, a few pictures of this 12-panel piece, and I was very intrigued. I really stood in front of it and took a lot of pictures. And last year, during the pandemic, my daughter had said to me, I have a tendency of every once in a while taking out the arts, the acrylics, and create maybe not creating, I say copy. I know that Laura Moats and Eric Fitzpatrick would say you are an artist and you create, but I like to copy things. And so I decided, she asked me to paint something for her that's in her room. And because I had the paints out, I said, you know what, I'm gonna try my hand at 3 of these panels. So I asked Bob to pick 3 of them. I talked to my friend Eric to say, I'm planning on doing these outside. What do you think? What should I use? And he, very smart, said, why don't you talk to Home Depot or Lowe's? People paint their houses all the time. So I talked to them, and I must have purchased, I don't know, 25 or 30 little tiny samples of all different colors. And I created my own Gillespie. So I'll show you. The Gillespies here were created and curated, if you want, one at a time. Bob was able to take the measurements and use painter's tape to put the areas on the wall, and that one at a time they were put up. Very different than a museum would. However, it was a lot of fun. Also, my window to the kitchen is right here. So when I'm in the kitchen at the sink and I'm looking out, I actually saw that people were walking by and sort of pointing and taking a look or commenting when we were outside. So these are the 3 Ode to Gillespies that I created. And I thought it was okay to still, to put those in here because it really was, it's another artist. So my interpretation, as I guess Eric will say to you. But I do love them. I don't have a lot of my own art. I give most of those away or all of them away. And it's really nice to be able to share this with people. So especially during COVID, when people have been walking around and up and down the street, they do stop and they look, and that's a lot of fun to be able to bring joy to some other people. And the last piece I'll tell you about, Josh and Tiffany Price, and they created what is called found object art. And there were some little statues, there was a mid-sized beautiful dragon, and there were some larger pieces. And the larger pieces were of a bird, and the body of the bird was made from a motorcycle gas tank. And I said to him, I've had an idea that I've been thinking about for about 15 years. I think you might be the person to create this. And I have over time, during those 15 years, approached about a half a dozen artists to say, can you do this? And it just never felt right. And he said, I think I could do something like that. I'm not used to doing something big, but I think I could. And so he said to me, here's my card. And I don't know if he really thought that I was going to contact him, but a month later I did. And over 10 months, I've had a relationship, Bob and I have had a relationship with him and Tiffany to create this last piece that you will see. And she has to be my favorite. So this, what you'll see over here.
And you met him and both of those artists at the Sidewalk Art Show in 2019, is that correct?
If that's the last in-person one? It was, yes.
Yeah.
So Josh and Tiffany created this Front Aline, as I call her, this fencer from found objects. And I said to Josh at the very beginning, okay, I want to be part of this every step of the way. Sorry, there's background noise there. I do want to be part of this every step of the way, and I'm going to be a little crazy about it. I'm very particular what I want to do and what I want to have. So hopefully you'll be okay with that. And he said yes. So you will see a progression of a couple of photographs. I received over the 10 months, probably hundreds of photographs and videos from Josh, where he works this incredible statue. She might be similar to somebody you recognize because all of her measurements are exactly my measurements. The first conversation was taking photographs and talking about the measurements and pictures. And then as she was being created, I would get these videos and pictures from Josh, and he would say, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And I said to him, oh, and there's fencers on the line here, and they can appreciate. Fencers have a front leg and a back leg and a front arm and a back arm. We don't have left and right. And I would say to him, the back leg needs to go up 2 inches. And he would say to me, like, wait, what are you talking about? That doesn't make sense. And afterwards he would say, you know what, it worked, it was right. So during the whole process, and I think we're gonna wind up going back inside because there's a lot of activity going on, but I'll have Bob go around Quentin, and then we can go back inside.
Just stunning. And we have the photo up with you, Bonnie, and next to where you can really see those dimensions. Well, I know there'll be a number of questions. Working with an artist side by side as you commissioned a work like that, and like you said, just very specific.
It was a very, very nice opportunity that we had. So as I was saying, that Josh would send me pictures and videos, and we would, he would ask my feedback. So for example, there was one time where he thought about using the washers to create the fencing mask. And I think, he spent a lot of time putting these all together, and he took a picture and he sent it to me, and he was really excited. He said, look what I did. And I said, Josh, it looks like a turtle. And he was like, yeah, I guess it looks like a turtle. So what I wound up doing is going on eBay and sending him directly a used fencing mask that he could take apart and to use as a mold, or to just be able to look at it really closely and see. So over time, he was able to create things like that. And it was really a wonderful relationship. There were definitely periods of time where I would make a suggestion, such as, I said, this is great. What are you going to do about the face inside? He said, what face inside? I said, well, you have the whole body. It needs a face inside. He said, but no one will see the face. I said, but I'll see the face. So it was, I don't think I heard from him for about a week and a half after that. I think he needed to just settle down. But he was really, really great. When Tiffany and Josh came by, they drove from Florida to bring her up here. The hope was going to be that at that 2020 arts show that they would be able to bring her up, but because of COVID, that didn't happen. So they decided that they were going to take a road trip anyway, and they brought her up. So when he brought her out, both of them said to me, this was a tough going, but I want to let you know that because of you, you gave me more confidence as a sculptor, and you pushed me to my limits. And now I'm really focusing on things that are bigger and that I can do entirely differently than I've done before. So I think it was really a great relationship. And I think the world of him. And he has a fantastic website as well. If you Google Josh Price, Collective Curiosities, I think might be the website. So it's just fun to be able to see some of the things that he's now working on. So that is our tour, and we're honored to have you be part of this.
Is there anything, Bonnie and Bob, that an artist that you're set to look to acquire in this upcoming year? I mean, the one, of course, during COVID, that you were able to bring and work with, and then the second piece with Josh Price. What's on the horizon?
It'll find us. I don't think we're going to look for it. We usually don't. It usually finds us. I think, if you were talking about fantasy, and if we said, here's a blank check, there's lots of artists that, I would love to have a Claude Monet and a Rodin, and Bob would probably put an addition in the house to have a Rothko. Yeah, he would just make an addition for that. But I think that I think the art finds us. Wherever we go, we're not looking to say, okay, we need to buy something or want something, but I think that there are certainly things that draw us in, and it's just the right time at the right place.